that's what I told the manager at that location. I looked him straight in his face and I said, I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't care about cars like that. I just don't. I care about my money. Hi guys, I'm Tiana Michelle and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I will be sharing tips on how to not get got when purchasing a vehicle. I'll be sharing detailed steps that you should take before purchasing a car so that the actual car buying process will be quick and painless, or at least less painful than it would be if you were to decide to impulsively walk on a lot and try to buy a car. Before you decide that you want to purchase a vehicle, you should first decide how much car you can actually afford and create a budget for that. Ideally, your total expenses should not exceed 15% of your net take-home pay. Okay, so for example, let's say you make $2,500 a month. That's what you take home. Your monthly car payment or car note should not exceed $375. Now, for your total car expenses for each month, you don't want them to exceed 22%. Now, this will include your car note, your car insurance, and your gas. So again, we'll go with the example of taking home $2,500 a month after taxes. You would not want your car expenses to exceed $550. And just remember that this is the maximum. So you don't want it to exceed that. So it's also great to try to aim for lower than that maximum amount. Okay, so again, speaking ideally, you would not want the total cost of your car to exceed 50% of your gross annual income. So let's say you make $50,000 a year, for instance. You would not want your car to cost more than $25,000, and that is including the sales tax and dealership fees. So any extra fees that are tacked onto the market value of the vehicle you're interested in, you wouldn't want it to exceed half of your annual income. And to determine how much car you can afford or your budget, you can use places like Edmund.com. They have calculators, or you can just use a calculator and budget all of your expenses yourself. So now that you've determined how much car you can afford or how much you're willing to spend on a vehicle, next, before car shopping, you also want to narrow down the cars that you're interested in to about 2 to 3 vehicles. So once you've narrowed down your vehicle choices to about 2 to 3 vehicles, you can compare the prices, the features, etc. to determine which car would be most suitable for you. So maybe you want a sedan or an SUV, you may want push to start or a keyless entry or a sunroof. There's all these different features that you can compare between both vehicles to see which one you like the best. And then when you've actually determined which car make and model you're interested in, you can begin researching that vehicle in your area. And sometimes you may find better deals outside of your city, so it wouldn't hurt to compare the prices of similar vehicles that may be 30 minutes away from you, maybe an hour away, because I find that sometimes the city that you may live in does not have a lot of competition between dealerships, so their cars are often overpriced. Comparing vehicles in your area will help when it comes to negotiating, and we'll talk about that later on in the video. So next, you'll need to ask yourself, will I be purchasing a car new or used? Now, this is your decision, but for me personally, I prefer to purchase used vehicles that are 1 to 2 years old, have only had one owner, and have low mileage. Now, for you, you may prefer to buy a new car. You may prefer to buy a car that's 3 years old or 5 years old. But it all depends on you and what would work best for you financially. The reason that I prefer to buy cars 1 to 2 years old is because they're still in fairly new condition, and also the first owner took the brunt of that car's depreciation rate, because new cars depreciate at least 20 to 30% in their first year. And me personally, I just don't want to spend money on a car that I know is going to lose at least $5,000 worth of its value as soon as I drive off the lot, because I know that's $5,000 that I just lost. And next, will you be financing your car? Will you lease it? Or will you be buying it in cash? Now, the first option would be purchasing a vehicle with cash. This is a good option for some people, but most of us don't have the luxury to spend $30,000 on a car up front. Now, for people who like to be in a new car every few years, leasing may be a good option for you. However, there are stipulations such as annual mileage limits, meaning that if you go over that mileage that has been set, you may have to pay extra. There'll be fees associated with that. The third option is financing, and financing is usually the most common option for people. So if you decide to finance your vehicle, shop around between different finance companies to determine which interest rate would be best for you. Also determine your loan term. The most common are 48 months, 60 months, and 72 months. Although the shorter the loan term, the quicker you pay it off, the better that would be for you in the long run. There are also 84-month loan terms, but I do not recommend going into an auto loan for 84 months because you're almost guaranteed to have negative equity on that vehicle, meaning that you're paying more on that car than what it's actually worth. You can actually calculate your monthly payments online, but when calculating your monthly payments, don't focus too much on that monthly cost. Focus more so on the total amount of the loan, because you can have a low monthly payment and still have a super long loan term, meaning that again, you'll have negative equity on the vehicle that you're paying on and be paying way more than what the car is actually worth. Some car brands actually have good deals going on for first-time buyers, which would be very helpful because unfortunately, first-time buyers will almost always have to deal with higher interest rates when financing a vehicle because they have no financial history or payment history to show that they are reliable and won't be a liability for a loan company. So as a first-time car buyer, the only way that you can really get out of a high interest rate is if you already have well-established credit or if you use a cosigner. And you know, I've never used a cosigner when purchasing cars, but I think it is a good option for those of you who have that luxury, but I would be careful with choosing who you use as a cosigner. And I would also personally be careful with deciding to cosign for someone. I know a lot of people use their parents, but when you use a cosigner, they are also financially responsible for your loan, meaning that if you mess up or you slip up on car payments or something happens, that affects their credit as well. It's something to really think about before deciding to get a cosigner. But if you have that opportunity and you do have someone reliable and with good credit that can help you, definitely use that option. If you are financing your vehicle, you should get a pre-approval before even walking into a dealership. I personally recommend going through your bank or through a credit union. Credit unions typically have better options for interest rates. Bank of America also has really great interest rates, but there is a credit score criteria that you have to meet. You typically have to have good to excellent credit to be approved for a loan through Bank of America, but if you have a good credit score, they're a good option to look at as well. But again, credit unions are a good option as well as the finance institution that you bank with. Pre-approvals are so beneficial because they give you freedom and power when car shopping. And I say this because you already know what lenders are willing to give you. When you're pre-approved for a loan, they already give you the amount that they'd be willing to approve you for. So you know what down payment you need to put down if you want to use a trade-in. You know all of this information ahead of time so that you are getting the best deal out of this purchase. Some lenders will even write you a blank check to take with you to a dealership with a pre-approval alone by itself. Now, my bank does not do that, but I do know there are banks out there that will do that for you, and it just makes the car buying process so much easier. I also want to note that The most important way to be pre-approved or approved for an auto loan in general is by showing financial independency, meaning that you need to have worked at your current job for at least 6 months, because when they run your credit for a pre-approval, they're going to look at your employer, and they're also going to look at your bank account to see how much you are bringing in monthly to determine if you can actually afford the vehicle that you want to purchase. And another benefit of getting pre-approved for an auto loan is that it prevents dealerships from running your credit numerous times, because this affects your credit score in such a negative way. It shows up as a hard inquiry on your credit report, and that stays on your report for over a year. And when applying for a pre-approval, it doesn't hurt to go through 2 to 3 different banks or credit unions. That way you can compare their interest rates and their terms to figure out which one would be the best for you, which one would be the most financially beneficial. And when getting a pre-approval, you typically have around 15 days to find a car. I would personally save pre-approvals for when you are very serious about purchasing a vehicle. So now that you have been pre-approved for an auto loan, you can determine how much of a down payment you want to put down, if you're going to be trading in a vehicle, if you're going to be doing both or one or the other. If you decide that you want to trade in a vehicle, determine if you still owe money on that car. It's easiest to trade in or sell a vehicle that is fully paid off, but I know that that is not always our circumstances, and you certainly still can trade in a vehicle that you still owe money on, but you need to figure out if you have positive equity or negative equity on that vehicle. Because if you have positive equity on that vehicle, you can use the extra money to go towards your new purchase. But if you have negative equity on your vehicle, you're more than likely going to have to pay that difference to get out of your current auto loan. And also decide if you are selling your vehicle privately or if you will be trading it in at a dealership. Selling a vehicle yourself is probably the best option, but it is more time consuming because you really don't know how long it'll be before someone decides to purchase your car, but you are more likely to get the full worth of your vehicle. A dealership is always going to try to give you a trade-in appraisal that is much less than what your car is actually worth, because they're looking to profit as well. And this is why I recommend finding your car's NADA value or NADA value. I prefer to use this over Kelley Blue Book, although that is a good option as well. But many dealerships use NADA to determine the value of a car. I am the daughter of a car salesman, so that's how I know a little bit of information about the car purchasing process. And when you go in and find your car's NADA value, you will notice that it lists 3 tiers. It'll list clean, average, and rough. A clean car will have the highest value because it has minimal cosmetic damage, no mechanical issues, probably has low mileage, so you would get the most worth for a vehicle that's clean. An average car is what most used vehicles will fall into, meaning that it has more cosmetic damage, may have a few scratches or paint chips on the outside, but there's still no major mechanical issues and the mileage is still in a decent range. It may be on the higher side, but the car still runs really well. A rough value is a car that probably has visible cosmetic damage. It may have mechanical issues, meaning that that car would have the lowest value out of all 3 tiers. It's still important to know your car's NADA value, because even if you go into the dealership with a rough trade-in, they will still try and price your trade-in appraisal at thousands of dollars lower than even your rough NADA value. I recommend knowing your NADA value, saving it on your phone, or printing it out and taking a copy with you to the dealership in case you need to use that when it comes to negotiating. Because knowing all of this information will make it least likely that you'll actually be lowballed at the dealership, because I'm just going to be honest with you, they're going to try to lowball you. So I know these are a lot of steps, but they're so worth it because now you are finally ready to go into a dealership. You're gonna go into the dealership knowing the exact car you want because you've already researched it online or contacted a dealership. You're going to know whether you'll be financing, leasing, or purchasing your car in cash. You're gonna have your pre-approval prepared, you'll have your down payment, and you'll have a potential trade-in to bring with you as well. And know that when you go into a dealership, you are not obligated to disclose your personal information, how much of a down payment you have, your monthly income, none of that, okay? You are not obligated to share that information, especially if you've already been pre-approved for a loan. If your financing for the car has already been taken care of, you don't need to disclose any of that information. And even if you do decide to finance through a car dealership, they don't need any of that information from you until it's actually time to sign off on that deal. When you actually go into the dealership, the main focus should be the car that you are going to be going home with. That should be your main focus. Go ahead and test drive the car to see how you like it. Sometimes things are not as they appear online versus when you see it in person. Ask for a Carfax in advance. It may also help you to go ahead and get a pre-inspection on the vehicle, especially if you are purchasing a used vehicle. This would be like a $150 to $250 investment, but it's definitely worth it if you are able to do it. Make sure you check all aspects of the vehicle. How does the engine sound when you are driving? Do you feel any weird skipping? Do you hear the brakes squeal? Do the brakes work well? Are all the lights working on the car? Do the windows roll down? You need to be really picky, okay? And you don't want to purchase a vehicle that's in super bad condition and you're left with those expenses. After you have done your test drive, you'll also do a trade-in appraisal if you decide that you want to trade in a vehicle that you currently have. Lastly, it'll be time for negotiation. Now, this can be very nerve-wracking for people, okay? I understand. But it's not going to be nerve-wracking for you because you have already done your research. You've already gotten your paperwork together. You have already taken all the steps necessary so that you are prepared. So at this point, all you have to do is use the knowledge that you have acquired. So once you go into the salesman's office or go to their desk or wherever to finally talk numbers, they're going to hand you an estimate of the bill of sale. Make sure you take a close look at the fees and total price of the vehicle and ask yourself, am I happy with this price? Does this work for me? Is this the price that I was told that I would receive initially, or has anything changed? Do not feel obligated to accept any old thing. And remember that you are in control of this transaction. If you're not happy with the price, negotiate it down. Use the knowledge that you have obtained through this entire process. Negotiating the price of the vehicle will vary depending on your situation, but preparing beforehand will definitely help you go in confidently. Let me give you guys an example. So for instance, when you go in to take an exam at the end of a semester, do you go in and take an exam for a class that you never attended, a class that you don't have, you never did the homework, you never studied, you never showed up, you're just not prepared at all? Like, you would never do that with any other aspect of your life. So why would you do it with purchasing a vehicle? It's so important to know your knowledge before going in, because this is your financial livelihood that we are talking about. This is your financial future. This is your credit. This is everything that can either help or hurt you in the future when it comes to future financial expenses. So it's so important to go in knowing a little bit. And I know that many of us do not come from families where this knowledge is just handed to you openly, but there's so many resources out there now and so much information that you don't have to come from a wealthy family or a privileged family or a family that homes so much financial knowledge to have access to financial literacy to better your own future. I went on my soapbox a little bit, so I got off task, so let's get back into the video. But it also helps when negotiating or when going in to purchase a vehicle to bring people with you who have your best interests at heart. This could be your parents or maybe a family friend or your uncle or your aunt, whoever. It does not hurt to bring them in because they're looking at this transaction from an outside perspective, so they can ask questions that either you forgot to ask, you got nervous, or there was just so much information, or maybe you've never even thought to ask those questions in the first place. They can help you out in that area. Don't be afraid to talk business. Don't be afraid to talk the price down. This is going to be something that either you own or you have to make monthly payments on, not the dealership. So do not feel intimidated. Do not shy away from trying to get the best for yourself. If you've already purchased a car before, then you know how this goes. Most dealerships are not going to budge initially when you talk about negotiating a price of a vehicle. They are trying to get cars off the lot. They're trying to make sales. They're trying to make a profit from you. So no, they're not going to budge at first. They're going to tell you that this is the best that they can do. They're going to tell you that there's nothing more that can be done. They're going to tell you that they can't go any lower on the price. They may even try to focus on aspects that have nothing to do with the actual car that you're buying. So instead of focusing on the total cost of the vehicle and what you will be driving home with potentially, they'll focus on your down payment. Or they'll focus on your trade-in and say that this car is worth such a small amount. But anyway, you have your native value, so you know better than that anyways. But what I'm saying is they're going to do whatever they can to not go any lower on that bill of sale estimate. But you aren't going to budge either because you already know your stuffs. So if you are not getting the outcome that you want, walk away. Tell them that you're going to take a step outside and you're seriously considering taking your business elsewhere. Now, when you do this, two things will happen. I'm going to go ahead and put the worst case scenario as the first option. Now, they may shake your hand and thank you for your time and allow you to walk right out that door. And what that means is that they just don't see your business as beneficial enough for them. And that's okay because somebody else will. So it does not end there just because that deal did not work out for you. But the second option is what is more likely to happen. Sometimes as you're walking out, the salesman will magically come walking out or running out with an updated estimate of a bill of sale. And this new bill of sale will usually either be exactly what you wanted or close to it. You may ask yourself why. Why did it take me an hour of negotiating with you or an hour of debating just to get what I want? You know why? Because if you already have cash on hand to purchase a car, if you've already been pre-approved for a loan, you have your trade-in, you have your down payment or either or, most dealerships are not going to allow guaranteed money to walk off the lot. They're just not going to do it. So there'll be many instances where you'll walk off with a deal you want because honestly, most of the time, their initial asking price is thousands of dollars more than that car's actual value. So I know this was a lot, but once you have gotten a deal that you want, you can go into the actual paperwork of signing off on the car and doing the next steps and getting your insurance in place and signing the deal and getting your new car. And before I end this video off, I want to just give a little background or a little story time or whatever of my own recent car buying experience. I purchased a vehicle a couple of weeks back and it was something that came super abrupt. It came out of nowhere. I was not planning on buying a car this year. The reason why I had to get a new car is because my Altima started giving me issues that had nothing to do with me. I hadn't even had that car for a year and a half before I started having transmission issues. If you are familiar with cars, then you have heard about Nissan and their CVT transmission issues, and the fact that they just are not willing to acknowledge that, and they like to make the consumer feel like it's their fault that their car has issues. So I was going to try to keep my car and see if I could get it fixed, but Nissan was just not willing to pay for those expenses, and they tried to make me feel like it was my fault. So I was like, I'm not doing that. So I went ahead and found out the value of my car, and I was just upfront and honest with dealerships that I was going to potentially trade in with. So this is how my negotiating experience went. I spent about an hour and a half debating with the car salesman, who eventually had to go and get the manager as well, who told me that there's just nothing that they could do, that my car is just in such terrible condition. I knew my car's native trade-in value, even with the mechanical issues that it had, and the dealership was trying to offer me thousands of dollars less than my actual trade-in amount. But I'm not going to spend too much time on that, because that's what they try to get you to focus on. Like, they tried to get me to focus on my trade-in instead of the car that I was actually interested in purchasing, and I just wasn't going to have that. You know, I had my native value on my car, so I went ahead and I, shut that down, because that's not why we're here. I did end up getting the full value of my vehicle by knowing my stuff. It took a lot of negotiating, because even though the dealership tried to focus so much on the smaller things, I wanted to look at the bigger picture of that transaction. And let me tell you, I was very honest with them, and I'll tell you exactly what I said to the manager. Because unfortunately, dealerships like to sell people a fantasy. You've already test drove that car and you're just so in love with it, right? And you love this car so much, and there's just no other car out there that will compare to this car. It's just the best car in the world, and you have to have that car. Well, I don't think like that, okay? There are better cars out there. This is not the only car out in the world. I don't have to have this car. And it's sad that dealerships do this, because people really do start to believe that there's just no other option out there for them, and that they have to have this car, and that this is the only opportunity that they'll be able to come across a vehicle like this. So oftentimes people will accept deals that are just going to cause them so many issues in the future, where they lose so much money, or they're paying for a car that they can't afford. Dealerships will bank on that. So you're sitting there like, oh, I just have to have this car so bad that it's okay if my interest rate is 5% more than what I know I can afford. It's okay if this car is $7,000 over my budget, because I'm just so connected to this car now and I have to have it. Well, I'm not like that, because I'm just not. I don't care about cars like that. And that's what I told the manager at that location. I looked him straight in his face. You can ask anybody who was there with me. And I said, I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't care about cars like that. I just don't. I care about my money, and I don't like this price. It's not good for my money. And yeah, I don't think he liked that very much, but I was just upfront and honest. He didn't say anything else to me. I never saw him again, okay? But as I was about to walk out that door, guess what comes out? A new bill of sale with the exact numbers and pricing that I wanted, that I went into that dealership knowing that I wanted and knowing that I was going to get, okay? So I just wanted to share that story with you all, just to encourage you a little bit before I end this video out. I really love discussing finances and tips that can help out people, especially young people, because a lot of us just don't come from backgrounds where we have a lot of knowledge about this. So we end up going into deals that really hurt us in the long run. But anyways, I am going to end the video here. I truly hope that you all enjoyed it and that it provided helpful information that you can use when going into your own car purchasing process. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment down below with any feedback or video requests for any of my future videos, and also give this video a thumbs up, and please remember that your support helps me out so much more than you know, especially as a smaller and newer channel. And if you haven't already subscribed, I'm gonna leave the button right up here for you, and I will see you all next Sunday. Bye bye.